that going.
There she is.
Well,
I was like, I was a little worried. I'm like, wait a minute.
And then it's like, do this, do that. And I'm like, oh my
Well,
gosh. Yeah. Thank you.
oh gosh. Well, you're good. You're here. Welcome, Heather, and welcome everyone who's joining us. And at any time, you guys, if you have questions for Heather or for me, just drop them in the comments. We're happy to answer questions. And so, yeah, I just kind of want to get started now. Sorry, I'm looking at something else here on my other screen. And first of all, Heather, I just want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining me for this live. And let me just introduce myself and then we'll introduce Heather. So my name's Elisa Martinez. I am a licensed marriage family therapist in California. And I'm also a coach for people anywhere across the country or world. And I invited Heather because she knows her stuff when it comes to religious trauma. So Heather is a coach, she's a mentor, she's a health educator, and her passion for her work is really informed by her own lived experience. And she also has had the opportunity to witness the incredible strength and growth and potential for healing in her years of work with many clients. So some of Heather's specializations include working with people with ADHD and executive function challenges, providing coaching, working with young adults and teens, and supporting people around religious trauma.
No, that was a lovely introduction.
Anything else you want to add about you? Great. I'm so glad. And welcome everyone if you're just joining in. And so we're here to talk about religious trauma, and I want to break it down and just like get to the basics. So if you had to define, generally speaking, religious trauma, what is that exactly?
I will take this so Marlene Weinell is a psychologist who really coined the term religious trauma syndrome. So I just want to read her definition. It is defined as the condition experienced by people who are struggling with leaving an authoritarian, dogmatic religion and coping with damaging indoctrination. They may be going through the shattering of a personally meaningful faith and or breaking away from a controlling community and lifestyle. So in addition to that, I just conceptualize trauma as going through any sort of circumstances and events in which just your ability to cope is exceeded. You know, I feel like religious trauma is what people say it is because it affects everyone really individually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love that this topic of religious trauma is being more talked about, right? Because we hear about other kinds of trauma, which can be equally as, damaging and painful. But I know both Heather and I have our own history of religious trauma, and just what I can say from my personal experiences, me coming from a Judeo-Christian background, that's kind of how my trauma showed up. It's really hard when you're dealing with something so all-encompassing, like your relationship to maybe a higher power, right? Or even, a larger religious community. And there's all these big existential questions about what's right and what's wrong. And are you a good person? Are you a bad person? And how huge that can be and impacting psychologically. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm wondering, I know we have our own backgrounds with religious trauma, and ours show up in kind of the Judeo-Christian tradition. However, I just want to acknowledge that, and you can speak to this, religious trauma can be experienced in other religious or spiritual contexts. Maybe if you want to speak
a lot of kind of the common
Okay.
features of a lot of religions are kind of high control and high demand environments. A lot of times, various religious principles are used as tools of fear, as tools to control, as tools to kind of, the way I also conceptualize it, separate who a person is from themselves. So that rather than looking inside for one's own intuition or being able to even check in with oneself, it becomes this externalized thing where it's like anything that I do that's good is attributed to another being, and anything that I do that's bad is then attributed to me. And so it sort of perpetuates this, I mean, a lot of sense of shame and unworthiness, guilt, fear. Fear is a huge one. And it just can be so damaging. And like you speaking to what you were saying, and it affects everything. You know, it's your community, it's your family relationships, it's your friendships, it's your identity, it's how you see the world, you know? So it's it can just be so pervasive and just get its tentacles, and if you will, in so many different areas of life.
Yeah, very well said. I think you hit the nail right on your head. And what struck me as you were talking is that with religious trauma, like you said, there's this separating you from your intuition, from who you are, right? And it's almost like you get to a place where you question yourself, you can't trust yourself, right? You believe you can't trust yourself. And in some religions and some spiritualities, this idea of not being able to trust ourselves because we have some kind of inherent badness or something that can't be trusted is there. And it's almost like there's kind of this gaslighting going on, right? Even if it's happening covertly, it's happening. Yeah. Well, and Heather, I'm wondering if you would like to share as much or as little as you like about your own history and why supporting people and educating people around religious trauma has become such a passion for you.
The daughter of a conservative evangelical pastor in the South. So it's like a bam, 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 bam. I was brought up a very, the school, you know, church was sort of the center of everything. I also was brought up in a bit of the, I don't know, the tail end, sort of the satanic panic. So there was a lot of, everything was evil. The Care Bears were evil. Jem's skirts were too short. The Smurfs were evil. There was so much fear about evil and demonic possession. I remember being a child and running up the stairs as fast as I could, being terrified of the dark because I literally thought that demons were going to come after me. And in that kind of in that same vein, there was also such a kind of a cloistering of not, you know, it was like I was in this Christian environment and these Christian schools, and I didn't really have a lot of, I don't know how to say, maybe I just couldn't really relate with like the secular world, if you will. It was very insular, you know, and the schools that I went to were also extremely legalistic, extremely like toxic, bullying, purity culture. Women who had sex before they were married were compared to like roses. I mean, roses like a rose stem with like no petals, spit cups. You know, there was just so much fear and polarization. It was like you were either bad or good. You know, there was no both and, it was an either or. And so about 13 years old, it all sort of came to a head when I kissed a boy for the first time. And let me tell you, that went sideways. And you know, at that moment I realized, for all the striving and kind of being this perfect Christian kid and doing these things, trying to meet this impossible standard, I just kind of was like, I like can't do this anymore, you know. And that's when I kind of started my rebellion, a lot of which really began as kind of normal teenage stuff. Um, I won't go into all of that. That's a whole other Facebook Live. But I was really left kind of coming out of that with just this deep feeling of shame and disgust and self-loathing, like for myself, because it was like I had done all these bad things. I was so bad, you know, it was just badness, badness, badness. And it took me, you know, that, you know, I had left the church. It was kind of, again, this returning, kind of coming out, returning to, coming out, returning to. And it was in my, I think it was in my late 20s. I had finally kind of left the church at that point and was struggling, and there was still grappling very much with this this belief system and this kind of this, again, the polarity of like, this is what I was taught, but this is like what I feel. And I was convinced to join this incredible group of women. It is run by this amazing woman. She's a feminist theologian. And it was, we met for at least 2 years, and it was every other week of eating together, being together, and deconstructing, like just deconstructing all of this. A lot of us were also like pastors' kids, and we cried, we screamed, we cursed, we embraced each other. Like it was this incredible, and that was when I started to really, I think, you know, starting to have the freedom to think, is hell maybe not real? And I definitely was worried that even the thought of that, am I going to get struck down by lightning? But it really opened up this ability to have that community and that that leadership of, you know, and to just disentangle all of this. So that was really the beginning for me. And I have spent many years in coaching and therapy and various different healing modalities to really continue to sort of work all of that out. And yeah, I am in I'm in a better place than I thought I could be today, that I thought was possible. And I think it's still a process. I think in anything, life, growth, healing, it's a process. It's an ongoing process. And yeah, I'm still in that process. And so it is such a passion to be able to see people who are just in the middle of it, struggling, and to know what's possible out of that, to understand the language and the culture. You know, sometimes you say you know, like, you know, I too was taught that the earth was less than 10,000 years old and dinosaurs still roamed because missionaries saw them. And a lot of people look at you like, you know, but I'm like, oh, same. Yes, I get this. You know, it's like, it's your experience. I would love to hear about your experience as well, because there's a bond, or like almost like a language that we both can, you know, that we're people who have experienced a certain type of trauma maybe can both speak to. Yeah.
Right. No, exactly. And before I kind of share a little bit about my story, I just want to highlight how wonderful it was that you had this supportive community as you were coming out of the church, right? That's huge, because I think for a lot of us who have struggled with religious trauma, or who might still be struggling, those supports might not seem obvious or there, right? I know when I was coming out of my struggle, I was very much alone, and it was really hard. And also that process of deconstructing, you know, I very much, when I was kind of walking away or trying to climb out of this hole that I had been in because of my own religious trauma, I still had my spiritual beliefs, and I wanted to hold on to what was good and true about that for me, right? I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I wanted to keep what was good and right for me. And so I just want to speak that for anyone who might find themselves in this process, it doesn't have to be about, you know, rejecting the good parts that, you know, reflect your most deeply held values and beliefs, right? It's about
Yeah, that is
coming to
that is
a
so beautiful,
healthier
and I think
place
just
with
right on.
it.
It's not about
Yeah.
returning to
Yeah.
an extreme. It's not going from one extreme to the other. It's about, I think, the both and the gray areas that we get to have. We get to
Mhm.
keep what serves us, and we get to let
Yeah.
go of what doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. And one thing I wanted to ask you, well, I'll share a little bit about my personal experience, and I'll just kind of keep it
Yeah,
abbreviated. And
we all
it's
are.
something that I am still healing from, right? Like you said, still a process. But I want everybody to know, when I think about where I was back then, I think this was in my 20s. Yeah, it was in my 20s I was going through all of this. And now I'm early 50s. When I think about where I am now, I would have never, ever imagined that
Yeah,
I could feel and be and have the life that I have now. I was in such a really traumatized,
yeah,
despairing, struggling, anxious, fearful place back then. And so talking about it now, you know, literally decades later, I'm just amazed. And so just kind of holding out that hope, like
yeah,
you just never know the cool stuff that life has for you as you go through this healing journey. And so, you know, how it started for me was I was not raised in a religious household at all. My parents were kind of agnostic, but I remember being in high school and really searching, and being a young adult and really searching for something. Like I really wanted some kind of
hmm,
spirituality. I wanted to, you know, believe in God or something, right? And I remember just really longing for that. And fast forward, when I was 21 years old, I had what I still think of as a pretty eye-opening spiritual
yeah,
experience, kind of like metaphorically the clouds parting, and like I felt like my eyes were kind of opened in this way. And I knew that, oh wow, there is something, right? And I won't necessarily get into kind of the nitty-gritty of all that. And it was such a beautiful experience. It was so wonderful, so relieving after having searched for so long. And to this day, you know, that was a very
yeah,
special experience.
yeah,
And so, but I didn't really know what to do with that, right? And I had a lot of friends, and I had been raised around
yeah,
people who were Christian and took me to Sunday school with them and all that. And so my one of my good friends who identified as born again evangelical, she, you know, knew I had this experience. And so she kind of led me on this path of, you know, this evangelical Christianity. And I just thought, yeah, you know, this is what I need to do. I need to pursue this, right? Because I know that this is kind of where it's at. And so I did that. And over time, I think a lot of the psychological,
hmm,
emotional wounding and
yeah,
baggage that I've carried my whole life, right, from old trauma, old stuff, kind of grew. Like being in the church and in this religion gave it really fertile ground to grow. So my self-esteem was already really shaky before I entered into this, you know, the church. And then it just became even more so
yeah,
because now there was this context of like, oh, are you a sinner? Like, yes, you are. And you have to work really hard to be
mm,
good. And so my
yeah,
perfectionism came out, my feelings of not being good enough came out. And there were a lot of teachings in, you know, the evangelical Christianity that I was involved in that were
yeah,
very much what you spoke of earlier, right? We can't really trust
yeah,
ourselves. Things of the world and
yes,
secular things are bad, satanic panic kind of stuff, right? So I just, that kind of blossomed in me, right? And how it culminated was, I think in my late 20s, I kind of had what I call a classic nervous breakdown, where I got, I was having panic attacks a lot. I was really, really depressed, and I couldn't really function. And that was the lowest part of my life, the most terrifying internally part of my life. And I did climb my way out of it. I have gone through a lot of healing, and I essentially feel like my life started over through that healing process. Yeah. So even though this happened a long time ago to me, it's very present. I'm still healing. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. And I know we have a lot of people joining, and, feel free to, put in your comments if you can resonate with some of this. And yes, Heather is the best. Heather is great. You have some fans here. Uh, uh, and I'm wondering what advice or support or words of wisdom you can offer to people who might be coming out of this, right? Or might be in this, and going, oh my gosh, I'm in this. And who maybe feel scared about even questioning their beliefs, because that's really scary, to question these kinds of things. That can be really scary.
No,
so I'm just going to, give you the floor
struck
for
down
that.
by lightning, being sent to hell, trying to get saved 8,000 times. That was all a result of fear. Am I good enough? Am I, making it? I think a lot, I'm so inspired by your story, and I appreciate you sharing. And I think so much of that is kind of how what I think can be some of the most healing to people who are struggling with the same thing is just hearing where people have come from and what's possible and where we get to. I think some of the words of wisdom I have are, first of all, you're not alone. It may feel, because part of a lot of these religious communities feel very insulating until they're not, until you're not abiding by the rules, so to speak, and then they tend to fall away. So you're not alone. What you've experienced is valid and real. And as you were saying, it doesn't matter if it was 100 years ago. This stuff can just stay with us and affect our lives in ways that we don't always understand. I would say, secondly, I'm a big fan of IFS. I'm a big fan of Dr. Becky. And I may get emotional, but that is what that is. But I just want to let people know that they are good inside. You're not sinful. You're not bad. Who you are, your identity, any part of you, there's nothing wrong with you. And I want to throw out the possibility, because it can be hard to sort of hear these things. There can be a resistance, but the possibility that maybe these parts of you that have not only not been appreciated, but have perhaps been shamed, been guilted, been judged. Maybe those are the best and most beautiful parts of you. And maybe that is what you bring to the world. And I have a theory that when authoritarianism comes into contact with something that can't be controlled, it's like, and so I just sometimes really think the wildness, the uniqueness, the queerness, whatever it is just, how is that not some of the most, how is that not the beauty of all of this, is our uniqueness and individuality. And I think the final thing that I hope people can also see with our stories and many people's stories is it can get better, and it can get so much better. And that's not to minimize trauma and the work it takes. I mean, I've been doing this work for years and years and years. That is not to sort of like hop right over it and be like, look how good things are. You know, there is a very valid and real and difficult and heartbreaking process that this can often be. And there is so much beauty on the out, like at kind of the, as you move through this, and the reclamation of yourself, of maybe these, again, these things, these parts of yourself that have been so devalued. It's just, I mean, you want to talk about a miracle. You know, you want to talk about a miracle, you want to talk about something, this word may be triggering for people, but something holy, something sacred. You know, I think people being able to find themselves again, that's why I do this. That's why I'm so passionate about it. And I'm also on that same journey as everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have goosebumps from hearing you talk. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you know, and when I reflect on my experience, I mean, I became a psychotherapist as a result of my experience, right? There's a lot of factors why I went into this field, but that's the big one, was my own healing and my own desire to discover what is possible, what is possible. And so, yeah, I'm just resonating with what you're saying. And also want to acknowledge that, you know, again, there might be some people who watch this or who are here now who might not identify with the evangelical Christian or, you know, whatever sect of Christianity, kind of religious trauma, right? And so I know that a lot of times the conversations that I'm seeing online on social media, right, about deconstructionism and purity culture is very much centered around the Judeo-Christian. So, yeah, just want to acknowledge that this can happen in a number of traditions, right? And there are people who are going through what you're going through, and they maybe don't know there's other people going through it, and you maybe don't know, right? So I just want to encourage everyone to know that you're not alone. And I know right now, like I said, this is a topic that's really being talked about a lot more on social media. There are Facebook groups dedicated to, you know, it's a forum for people to talk about their experiences with religious trauma. And I'm a member of one of those groups at least. And it can be really refreshing to hear other people talking about their experiences and seeing, oh, wow, them too, you know, other people too. You know, there's a lot of Instagram accounts that are devoted solely to this kind of conversation. And, you know, I don't think social media is a substitute for good one-on-one support, coaching, or therapy, but it can be a helpful part of your process, right? Yeah. Yeah. And Heather, can you, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you,
so
can
my
you share
website is
how you might be contacted?
www.heathercara.com. So heathercara.com. And you can email me at heather@heathercara.com. But if you just go to my website, you can, that's the easiest way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Some people would want to connect with you. And again, Heather is a coach. She's a mentor. She's a health educator. She does a lot of good stuff. Check her out online. If anyone wants to talk to me or reach out to me for some reason. So I am a psychotherapist, and I specialize in supporting people with anxiety and trauma. And sometimes people do bring things that are of kind of a spiritual, religious orientation in terms of things that are troubling them. And so I am at elisamartineztherapy.com. The link is in my bio.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear from people. And Any closing words, Heather, that you want to share, or
Yeah.
resources, or
So I
things
was
that
actually
people
reminded of this
might,
today, and so I thought
I don't know.
maybe I should share it. It's going to put me
Mhm.
all in the feels, and I may cry, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So there's a incredible meditation teacher. Her name is Sarah
Mhm.
Blondin, Blondin. I love her, and I was listening to one of her
Mhm.
meditations today, and I thought
Mhm.
maybe someone needs to hear this. And then I thought, well, maybe we all need to hear
Mhm.
it. And it's just an excerpt, but it says, I want
Yeah.
to give you permission to love yourself first. To remind you that in doing this, the rest will follow, and all that does not will fall away. I want to give you permission to lie here on this earth and understand that this is all for you. You do not need to effort to be loved or accepted for anything other than what you are. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to be as you so simply, perfectly are. Begin to love yourself so much that all you are living aligns with and reflects that love. This you deserve. Go now, eyes wide open, without fear. Bring your life in line. Force no pain away. It is all conspiring to bring you home. Go now. Start exploring, expressing, choosing the truths that sit quietly within you, waiting to guide you to nourishing life. Yeah.
Mm. That is so, like, there are no words. That's
Oh,
so,
I listen. I know.
and
I know.
I want you
I
to
was
send
like,
that to me.
yeah.
Mhm.
I have used. So
Yeah.
she's actually been a very healing source for
Yeah.
me because I feel like the words that she says are the words that I would
Mhm.
have wanted. Like if I would have wanted a deity or a spiritual presence. Like I feel like that it's kind of this embodiment of love, and I feel like that's whatever we're doing here. That's it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that message
Yeah.
that you're okay just
Yeah.
as you are, that is like such a relief and a breath of fresh air, because that message alone, and understanding that for some people coming out of religious trauma or experiencing it,
Yeah.
that journey to accepting that and being able to receive that
Oh,
truth, it
absolutely.
might not, that might feel really far away right
Yeah.
now, because there might be a lot of
Right.
parts of you that are like, no, but you know um, so yeah, just want to acknowledge that, and also want to acknowledge, some of the comments that we're getting here. And yeah, so many of us, well, I didn't, but many people I know grew up in a religious home, and how when they leave
Yeah.
that environment, they're really unprepared for the world outside or life outside of that, right? But like, we have someone sharing here. She said, I think I know who this is. That's why I'm saying she. That leaving led
Hmm.
her towards her
Yeah.
first steps to independent thinking, confidence, and love for me, and that
Hmm.
her
Yeah.
spiritual journey is stronger now because it's her own choice. And so, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing. Well, I want to thank you, Heather, and I
Yeah.
would love maybe to chat again, right? If this is a topic that more people want to,
Yeah.
explore and hear
Yeah.
about, then definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yay.
much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Yay! And, and I just want to let people know that I am going to be doing these Instagram lives every 2 weeks now. And I'm going to have a different coach or specialist or therapist come on and talk about, a topic that's near and dear to their heart. And I would love for you to join
Yeah.
us,
Would
Heather.
love that.
If you want
So,
to come back, we could make that happen too. Uh, yeah. So folks, tune in. And I don't know if the Instagram lives are going to be every Monday. I mean, no, every Thursday. It really is going to change depending on the availability of everyone. But yeah, I hope to see y'all in 2
Oh,
weeks. I'll put out some information.
yeah.
And thank you so much. And so, yeah. And I have to figure out how to try to save this. I don't want to lose this live because I do want to keep the recording. So I'm gonna, yeah, maybe mess with some little controls here. But thank you so much. And I will,
Bye-bye.
yeah, we'll see you all. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Let's see, how do I do this? How do I save it?
I
Don't know. Let me see. Yeah, I guess if I exit out, let me see. I'm just popping
Okay.
like.
I know I won't be in
You can get off anytime
technologically.
you want if
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
guys.
This
This
was
was like
lovely.
my very
Talk
non-techie.
soon.
Okay, I'm
Bye.
just gonna close it and see what happens. Okay, bye.